Hello, and welcome to the Self-Care with Herbs segment of the Elder Tree podcast. I'm your host, Jess Bosker, naturopath, herbalist, and medicine maker. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Banjalang people, the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, come along and join me each month for beautiful conversations with guests from across the country, exploring ways we can weave plant medicine into our days to enrich our experience of self-care, sharing routines, rituals, and recipes for elevating mind, body, and spirit. In this episode, I'm lucky enough to chat again with the ever-enthusiastic and entertaining Kat Green. We have lots of laughs as always. Kat's a folk herbalist and grassroots community herbal organiser and educator. She's passionate about making it easy and normal for people to make simple, effective herbal remedies at home. Through Everyday Empowered, she offers a wide range of practical ways for people to learn about herbs. During this wide-reaching conversation, we explore how we can deepen our understanding of self-care to encompass both community care and earth care, because we know that health doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's a product of our interactions and interconnections with the world around us. But when we're already overloaded and busy and distracted, it can quickly feel overwhelming to think about becoming activists to change the bigger structures around workplaces and the environment. Conceptually, we might understand what's required, but on a practical level, what do we do about that? Kat and I agree the first step is having conversations like these in our communities, our families, and our workplaces. Without these conversations as a starting point, it's impossible to change the cultural expectations in our workplaces to begin creating new social norms. Moving away from the idea of self-worth being tied to productivity, which can be a fast track to burnout. We agree that feeling a part of and connected to the natural world encourages a sense of awe and a desire to protect and conserve, and helps us understand how taking action can be a form of self-care. Kat makes a really lovely point that we're so quick to believe that the smallest things can hurt us. One drink, one cigarette, but we're also really quick to dismiss that small, positive, consistent actions will have a cumulative benefit. We definitely don't have all the answers, but together we offer some gentle, practical suggestions for building community connection and to care for and build connection with the earth to begin to deepen our practice of self-care. Hello and welcome back to the Self-Care with Herbs segment of the Elder Tree podcast, Kat.
Very excited to be talking to you again, Jess.
Yeah, it's lovely. So we've already had a really lovely chat on this segment, and listeners can go back and have a listen to that one. We really delved into what self-care looks like for you in a really specific way. We looked at lots of practices, but today we're going to go a little bit broader and deeper and really look at how we can incorporate the concepts of earth care and community care into our idea of self-care, and how that might really bring self-care, make it more fulfilling and more beautiful for ourselves. So why don't we first look at earth care and what that means to you and how that might start to impact on the way that we look at self-care.
Yeah, well, I think for me, like a good starting place is to, like, I think of self-care as ultimately being in service of building health and well-being. And I think that when we look at it from that point of view, that it's something we do to build health, we have to understand that health doesn't happen in a vacuum and that we can do things individually to look after our health. But there are so many, like, we live within an environment, we live within a community, we live within these institutions, and all of those also have an impact on our health and well-being. And that's really why I'm passionate and exploring this idea of broadening our concept of self-care to include these other areas, because they really affect our capacity for individual health and the health of every being and every person and every tree and animal around us. And I think that at the heart of that is this real interconnectedness. And I think we can sometimes underestimate, we're so used to observing with our physical senses and being like, oh, my body ends here, therefore I'm not really connected. And we can just forget the exquisite way that we are so deeply entwined with the world around us. And that has such an influence on our health. And, to go back to your question about looking at earth care and the environment, I love David Suzuki's book from years ago. Did you ever read it? About the argon atom in air. And so argon is like an inert substance, and it's really abundant in air. But because it's inert, we breathe it in and then we breathe it back out unchanged. And so these argon atoms are just circulating in the air we breathe. And so this atom has literally been inside you, it's been inside me, it's been inside people since the beginning of time, all of the animals who breathe air. And we are so deeply connected, it literally comes into our physical bodies. Not that the lungs are technically inside, but you know what I mean. And so it's just, there's new stories or new ways of understanding the world that we can see that interconnection. And then... yeah, so I think that when we look at that from a self-care, earth care point of view, it's important for us to protect the quality of the air, and they saw that back in the 50s and the 60s. We had the Clean Air Act as people realized that pollution was actually hurting human health. And so they kind of mobilized to come together to create these new regulations and standards to protect the commons, the air that we breathe in every day, and how in doing that, that might not be an action that we traditionally associate with self-care, but in doing that, in protecting the air that we all breathe, we're able to improve not only our own health, but everyone else's health. And I think that's a really important concept to draw on and to think about when we think about health and building health and self-care.
I love that, Kat, that sense of interconnectedness. And I think too, there's so much doom and gloom around the state of the earth and the world today. Having a way to kind of know that acting to protect the earth is actually quite empowering, rather than kind of, sitting in that fear and worry. Actually taking action is empowering. And isn't that a wonderful form of self-care?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, focusing on what you can do. And I think as well, realizing that because a lot of these problems are big problems, we have to work together. We have to take actions sustainably within our capacity at the various levels. Maybe we plant a tree in our area. Maybe we don't use pesticides in our garden. That's the individual actions we can take to care for both our health and the planetary health. But then we come together with other people, and maybe we are part of a conservation effort in our natural area to protect, the logging of trees, or protect, old habitat for birds. And that might also be part of our healthcare strategy in a way, because we're extending this bounds of our physical body to then include kind of if we think about the skin of the atmosphere is like a skin for the whole planet, and that maybe becomes our bigger extended sense of ourselves. And so anything we do to care for the planet and everything within that is part of our own healthcare. I don't know.
I love it. And I love, it's very common for us to be existing in these silos, right? Silos of our own individual person, of maybe our own individual family group, and maybe not connecting at all with the outside environment or with the wider community. And often that feels too hard, hey? It feels too hard to kind of get out of our own little silo and go and make that first connection with somebody outside of our immediate circle, or, take that first step and somehow connect with the earth, whether that's, picking some things out of a garden or sitting under a tree and inhaling the beautiful scents. I think people get stuck in that, it's just too tricky. This is how it's always been for me, and I feel really comfortable here in this silo, and not realizing the benefits of starting to bring in that interconnectedness with the earth around us and our wider community.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many tangents in what you just said. Even just that sensory, to pick up that you want to be outside feeling the sun on your skin and smelling the flowers in the garden, because if you're not feeling like you're part of the world and connected to the natural world, you're not going to want to protect it or want to see that even and understand that that has an impact on you individually and your health. So it's kind of we need to have that, reclaim and return to that relationship with the natural world, which a lot of people are losing as we kind of urbanize and so spend so much time indoors and on screens. Like, it's sometimes surprising to me when you see all the statistics about how little people are outside. And did you hear years ago about the uproar about when the dictionary took the nature words out of their dictionary?
No.
Did you hear that?
No.
It was quite a while ago. Like, I feel it was like 2018. I don't know exactly when, but it was a little while ago. But Oxford Dictionary, I think it was Oxford. I don't know. I'm not really great at remembering details, but the story is a big dictionary, I'm assuming Oxford, took all of these nature words out of the dictionary, like acorn and wren and starling, to replace them with download and cut and paste and like all of these technical words.
No way.
Yeah, honestly.
Oh,
and
gosh.
everyone's like, oh, we just like, do we not, like, we have progressively lost all of this language that we have to describe nature. And if we don't have words to describe it, then we can't have a relationship with it. Like, it's so foundational to being in relationship with things is having a name.
Yes.
And yeah, I think that was really, really interesting.
So interesting. I think too, a lot of the disconnection is related to the pace at which we live our lives. You know, if we look back 100 years, you know, how much slower was life? You know, how much more, you know, space was there in people's lives to be able to stop and connect? You know, people are probably spending time outside, but they're at such a pace, you know, I must get my morning walk done. You know, that's what I do in the morning. And, you know, they're in such a state to get that morning walk done, get home, you know, have breakfast, get the kids out the door, get in the car, go to work. That, did they notice that the red gums are flowering? Or that, you know, there's black cockies flying overhead? Or that, you know, all that beautiful little change in the atmosphere that you can sense when the seasons begin to change? Was any of that noticed? And I think it's so important to, you know, remind people that you can still get everything done, but you can also have those beautiful moments of connection throughout your day.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think that's part of this conversation. Like, I'm really interested in exploring how do we expand our understanding of self-care, but quickly we run into this challenge of we're already overloaded. Like, we're already at full tilt. Many of us are burnt out and exhausted. So to kind of add on this new understanding of self-care where suddenly we've got to go out and be like, you know, conservation activists or like community, you know, social justice activists or whatever it is, like workplace activists, to change the bigger structures, it can feel really quickly overwhelming and unachievable. And so I think there's definitely, you know, while conceptually I think we can understand it, on a practical level, it's like, well, what do we do about that? You know, there's so many issues in the world, and it's so easy to feel, like you said earlier, like powerless or burnt out on them all, or just confused about how to take action in a meaningful way. But I think we need to have those conversations together, because if we just go, oh, I feel overwhelmed, I don't know what to do, I'll put it in the too hard basket, it kind of like we shortchange ourselves, really, because, you know, the community environment that we live in, the workplace environment that we work in, the, you know, even the physical home environment that we live in, they all do impact our health every day. Like, even clutter, like there's a bunch of scientific studies showing the impacts that physical clutter has on our mental health. Like, we sleep worse, we stress more, we're not as productive, we can't focus, we're even more likely to have like sugary snacks and watch TV.
Yes.
You know, and that's just looking at physical clutter. And so I think we can underestimate how often, like how much impact and influence our environment has on our health. And then we're like, oh, I'm feeling so stressed. Like, what do I do? Oh, I'll take ashwagandha because it's a quick fix, or we know that herbs are helpful. But if we don't put that in the context of maybe for you as an individual, maybe it actually is getting rid of the physical clutter in your home. But, and then this is where that complexity, that there'll be like a different linchpin for every person. For one person, it will be physical clutter. For someone else, that won't make any difference to them. Maybe it really is that they need that 10-minute meditation practice in the morning, or maybe it is that they need to actively change their workplace culture so that they don't, you know, I'll get into that in a second, but I think that adds the complexity that we have a range of options and different ones will be the linchpin for different people. And so that's our own personal experiment, you know, to see what really works for us and what moves the needle for us in terms of our own individual health. But to be able to put that in the context of feeling empowered and in control and not overwhelmed by the options or not overwhelmed by how much there is to do. I don't know. What do you think about all that?
I'm wondering, Kat, does it all come back to re-establishing connection with community? I feel like when we're in our own silos and it's like, oh my goodness, there's so much to do and I have to do it all by myself, that's when it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
Whereas when we're in this beautiful melting pot of community where minds are melding and ideas are shared and the load is carried together, it's so much more empowering and motivating.
Definitely. And I definitely think there's a part of that is realizing that, you know, we all bring our own gifts to the world and have our own role to play in this story. And that if I know that you're doing this over here, I don't need to do that. I'll trust that as a community, we are tackling this together. And so you can tackle that and I'll tackle this. And we know that together we're weaving the threads that are going to make change together. But yeah, when we're alone and we just feel, oh my gosh, I can't do it all. Well, we don't need to do it all. Like you said, we just play our small part and our little role and know that when we add all that together, particularly if we are doing our small role in community, then that has, you know, it's that snowball effect, like the change will happen faster because we're doing it together.
For me, one of the most beautiful ways of connecting with community, and also this kind of weaves into the earth care aspect as well, is going to a local farmer's market. You know, when you go to a local farmer's market, you're connecting with the people that are growing your food, so you're eating food in season. You know that you're part of a bigger solution because you're not buying food out of season. You know the grower and you know how they're growing your food. And I think it's often a community kind of event because lots of people come together and it's kind of a nice melting pot. What have you found, Kat, in your life is a great community builder and connection builder in community?
Good question. I actually do a lot of my life in community. We're very blessed to homeschool. And so, you know, like we educate in community, like we educate our kids in community. I'm part of bulk buying co-ops, so we use our bulk purchasing power to buy together so we can, you know, afford organics more financially sustainably. But it's also fun, you know, like we're just there together. Like we've got our quarterly co-op coming up soon, and we'll be there sorting the produce for like 30 families. And we're surrounded by food and it feels so abundant. And like you just have these connections where you check in with each other and you're supporting each other, but you're also, you know, getting organic food more cheaply and affordably. So I think there's a lot of ways to do that. And like I love doing that through the work that I do with Herb Folk, which is like our monthly herbal medicine workshop. You know, we're doing medicine together in community. We are learning in community. We're not just having to do it all by ourselves. And I think that really, I'm lucky that I think I've got that as a central part of how we do life together. But it is more motivating, like that, you know, when they say that you are the sum of, you know, the 5 people you spend the most time with, because we influence each other. And kind of going back to how we build health, like if we want to build healthier habits in our life, it's much easier when our friends are also living those healthy habits or trying to build those healthy habits, because we can mutually reinforce, you know, or we can kind of like encourage each other or share what's hard for us and know that someone will understand us. So I do think that, you know, health is built collectively. I'm not sure if that quite answers your question, but
yeah, no, it does. It's beautiful. I really like that approach. You mentioned talking about workplace culture and how that really can influence our ability to invest in self-care.
Yes, I've just read this book by Cal Newport. I love it. I love his work in general, but he's got a new book out called Slow Productivity, and it's kind of aimed at knowledge workers or small business owners. So people who do a lot of cognitive thinking and work on a lot of computers for their main work. But he looks at how we don't have any reasonable way of like measuring productivity in these environments. You know, we still have this notion of productivity that is like very mechanistic. Like if I improve this, output based. And so it's kind of like, so we have this, because of that, we've developed this culture of what he calls pseudo productivity. And so it's like, people don't believe that we're really being productive unless we show them that we are. And we do that by sending a lot of emails or going to a lot of Zoom meetings and being part of that. But because of all the digital technologies, there's so much overwhelm that comes along with that, because our days are so full of all these activities that they're not even like the job. They're not even like us actually producing whatever we're paid to produce, but it's all the crap that kind of comes along with that then leads to burnout. But then because of this like misunderstood way of understanding productivity, if we don't respond to emails, people will think we're not doing anything. And so it's this kind of bind that, you know, modern knowledge work is in. And he's got this story in the book of a guy during the pandemic who had a heart attack. And his first, like, he survived, and he wrote on LinkedIn, he's like, here's my 6 resolutions for being healthier in the future. And the top resolution he had was no more Zoom meetings, or like less Zoom meetings. Totally. But so many people are related, and it's like, this guy had a heart attack and his number one resolution is to have less Zoom meetings. Like, there's such, you know, and we can only change those cultural expectations in our work environments together. Like, he could just go, right, I'm not going to go on any more Zoom meetings, but he'll probably get fired because everyone's going to be like, we need to talk
Where are
to
you?
Where are you? But so this book's got really practical ways of starting to unpick some of these concepts around not measuring work productivity by busyness, and, you know, then all of that, the health ramifications that has for our work, you know, for our mental health and our overwhelm and our burnout. And it's really, really fascinating. But that's, again, like, we can do some things individually, but we'll be more effective if we kind of do that together, and we kind of create new social norms and new expectations of our work environments together. And it's like, there's another example was when you're in like a law office or one of those big corporates, and they have like the well-being officer who is like, you need to meditate for 10 minutes every day and then come and work your 80-hour work weeks, you know, with no sick pay and no leave and like all this stuff. Is like, 10 minutes of meditation's not going to like, it's kind of like the wellness washing of this really unsustainable work institutions, you know?
So interesting, Kat. And it kind of takes us back to that whole concept of, you know, people are full, aren't they? You know, people are full because of that construct of, you know, to be productive, this is what needs to be seen. And, you know, really that's just kind of, as you said, the tip of the iceberg, and the real work's all happening underneath. So really we're, you know, doubly busy than what we're being measured by, aren't we?
Yeah. And I mean, there's that whole other conversation, which is that, you know, we've tied self-worth to productivity anyway. And so, you know, that's another part of how we can fall into this trap of not being able to rest enough and expecting that people will respond at all times of day. And yeah, I think there's a lot of parts to that. But I mean, it's interesting when we bring it back to our individual health, like, what do we do about that in terms of taking action on our health? You know, I think we can use the herbs, we can do the 10 minutes of meditation in the morning, but then maybe we also have to have those conversations with our colleagues at work. Or I'm not really sure. Like, it's interesting though to expand and broaden that conversation, but to also keep it small enough or actionable enough that it doesn't feel overwhelming.
Absolutely. And I think too, it's important to have those conversations, most definitely, because that's where the bigger change is going to happen, but not feel overwhelmed by the inaction in that space, so that we're kind of stuck and not really making any of the small changes that can help us to feel those sparks of motivation and well-being from doing little things every day. Yeah,
absolutely, because there is a lot of little things we can do every day. Yeah, and it always blows my mind, like, we're so quick. I always have this conundrum, like, we're so quick to believe that the smallest thing can hurt us. Like, you know, one cigarette or one drink or like one exposure to a toxic pesticide. We're like, oh no, I'm going to, like, my health is going to struggle. And I relate to that, so I'm not bagging that at all. But we're so we find it so hard to believe that small, tiny things will have a cumulative benefit to our health. Like, we'll be like, oh, 1 minute of meditation a day, like, whatever, like, it's not going to do anything. But it does. Like, 1 minute of meditation does help us, or maybe, you know, whatever it is, the small things do add up cumulatively.
Absolutely. And I think too, they create ripples, because, you know, you talk about with your community and your friends and your family about the benefits that you're experiencing from that small change. That then ripples out into their lives, and they think about taking up that practice within your, you know, family unit. Your children, your partner are all witnessing the small changes that are happening as a result of that consistency with that small thing that you're doing every day. And that becomes, you know, generational ripples, right?
Absolutely, because that's the legacy. Like, that's how the small actions are how you live your life. And so, you know, they build up to create a life. So that definitely will have ripple effects and create new patterns of being in the world.
I think, Kat, we've spoken about it before, but one of the simplest ways to start to have that connection with the earth is to recognise the seasons and honour them, and respond in ways that feel good for your body.
Yeah, I'm really passionate about that.
I read a beautiful article in our most recent Estuary Learning magazine, written by one of our members, Caroline Parker, about honouring the seasons and how often what's available, you know, whether that be herbs or whether that be food at a particular time of the year, and using that abundance is a really great way of helping to support our health, because often what's available within a particular season is what our body needs in that particular season. Yeah,
definitely. I can see that. And also just using, like, when we live aligned with the earth, just for example, like when we record this, where I live, it's still technically the end of winter, but I call this, I think we've got a 5th season or a 6th season really, like in here, which is, I call it transition season or the windy season. Like, it's probably need a better name, but it's not winter anymore. But it's not spring either. Like, we've got this in-between period, and I can feel that, and you can see the light, you know, the days stretching out. I can feel my body wanting to move a little bit more, come out of hibernation a little bit, and be a little bit more active. So I think we are influenced by the world around us on those levels. And if we're aware of that, and if we can recognize that within ourselves, and obviously everyone will experience that differently in different years, but we can lean into that. So we can plan for that. So I plan as much as I can for winter to be a bit more of a restful, internal, quiet season for me. You know, and this is, you know, we've got the ideal and then we've got the reality. Like, I've got Herbfest in winter. It's my biggest event for the year. It's a really a lot of work organizing it. And so I have to scaffold myself through that. And I kind of do my deep winter in July, where I really, you know, I book out that month to kind of slow down and not have deadlines as much as I can, to kind of counterbalance that energy output in winter. But there's something to be said for understanding that, because a lot of people will get colds and flus in winter because there's more bugs around, it's more cold, but also probably because we're running the pace of our life like it's still summer. Like, we just think, oh, it's summer, 370, I was going to say 375 days a year, but that's not 375 days.
You've added a few.
See? Classic busy person. I've got more days in my year. Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm teaching my kids about the world.
Oh dear. It's interesting, isn't it, how we are really bound by that calendar of 3 months for this season, 3 months for that season. And so, you know, even just that is an encouragement to ignore what your senses are telling you.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I don't find they reflect the seasons where I am. And even if they do, I think we've lost the relevance of what those seasons mean to us.
Yes.
You know, like, we have forgotten that summer is a time for that in Chinese medicine, like it's that yang, that expansion, the active energy. We've got the full strength of the sun. And so it's like a time for activity, a time for flourishing, a time for blossoming. But then also putting that in our subtropical context, summer is also our hottest time. So it's like we can be busy, but we also can feel really flat from heat. Yes. And so there's lots of layers to this, I find. But it's when we're responsive to it, we can kind of lean into the seasons to recognize that not every day is the same all year round, and that we can't have the same expectations of ourselves in terms of our energy output or how we feel, and realizing that different constitutions will thrive in different seasons.
Yes.
And so if you're a fiery constitution in the heat of summer, you might really get hot and irritable and overwhelmed and need different self-care strategies in that season than someone who is a cooler constitution and is reveling in it.
And ready to go with the abundance and the flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? I really love kind of looking at the herbs that are abundant during particular seasons too, and harvesting those, and knowing that kind of root medicines are really beautiful to harvest during the winter time, and a lot of those root medicines are the beautiful immune herbs that are going to help support us and see us through those times.
Yeah, and I find that fascinating when we come back to whether we're home herbalists or whether we're practitioners, and we often just talk about herbs as good for something. But, I think we need to even bring seasonality back to herbalism.
Yes.
Like these herbs can be useful all the time, but they might be more effective in this season when we really need them. And so it's, we need to move more into that nuance and specificity around herbalism, because otherwise we can look at all of the herbs that we have access to and be like, oh, I want to take them all. Like they're good for do you ever feel like this? You're like, oh, but that herb sounds so good. Like I want to work with it.
Yes.
And then you're like, oh, but I also want to work with this and I want to work with this. Whereas for me, I follow that wheel of the year from the Chinese point of view. And so I know spring is when I'll more prioritize my liver herbs to support my liver. And so then, not to say I won't work with them in other seasons. If I have patterns of liver imbalance, I'll definitely address those. But as that overarching view of my year, I'm like, oh, well, that's the season where it is most, some of those problems might manifest, or where I can just intentionally show my liver a little bit of extra support. And so it's a way of kind of managing the excitement that can come with wanting to use all the herbs all the time.
Yeah. Bringing you back down. But I think too, Kat, it comes back to what we were talking about before, and just encouraging more people to allow themselves those moments of stillness to actually tune in and recognize what's happening. Whether that is the change in season that's not reflected on the calendar, so that we are coming out of that kind of dormancy now. It's the same here, where the calendar is still telling me that we are in winter, but I can feel those changes in the atmosphere. You can see around you that there's signs of spring in the environment, and starting to work, allowing your body to work with those. But I would say that the majority of people are so on track and head down that they don't allow themselves those moments of stillness and connection throughout the day to tap into those seasonal changes and the connection with the earth that we're talking about, that then encourages that want to care.
Yeah. I think that is one of the foundational bedrocks of self-care, is that attunement with yourself, that relationship with yourself. I think that's what it's all built on, because when we bring that wanting to know who we are and wanting to know how we respond to the world around us, and paying attention and noticing and being in that dynamic, response and relationship, I think that's a big part of it. And I suppose part of that is when you do that, you notice how things affect you. You notice the effect of being too busy, or you notice the effect of not being outside for a few days or not eating well. So in some ways that encourages us to practice self-care, or to practice, because we can see the effects of it. It's just awareness, isn't it? And intention it comes back to.
Absolutely. And I think too, when you start to allow yourself that stillness and connection, you feel motivated and you want to share that with your community. And that's where that community care can kind of come in as well. You know, if you're someone who's feeling really passionate about this and you know that there's not many people within your community who are, you know, kind of witnessing or allowing or experiencing it, it's really motivating to kind of want to share those benefits.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I think just realizing like it can help come back to that idea of how interconnected we are. Like there's this really interesting branch of research called embodied cognition, where they look at how we make decisions, you know, with our mind, but also with our body. And they did this study a while ago where they were gauging people's response to other people. And so they told them, you're just going to do an interview and you're going to tell us about the person who you're talking to. And the person they were talking to was a paid actor who was told to just mimic the other person, so to attune with them. And before they went in, they gave half of the people a cold drink and they gave the other half of the people a hot drink. And so they're literally just holding a drink in their hands, right? And the people who were holding the hot drink rated the other person more highly, more positively. They said they were more warm. They said they were more friendly. Whereas the people with the cold drink were like, oh no, they're more distant. They're more cold. They're not as friendly. And that's the effect of just what you're holding in your hand.
How interesting.
So interesting. All of these studies, like we are so exquisitely interconnected and we affect each other. And I think when we bring that awareness of our own embodied response to the world, we can then bring intentionality into how we communicate with other people. And it can be really simple, like just smiling and having a chat with a checkout chick when you're at the shops, or when you pass someone in the streets, smiling at someone rather than just walking on past. And I know that can be overwhelmed in a city when you're passing so many people all the time. Yes. Like you can't smile at everyone like a total, like I do pretty much, like the country bumpkin now who comes in, I'm like, hi, like, yeah. I know that it's not always practical, but it's how do we bring this awareness, this care for other people into how we approach our daily life, knowing that that is a way that we affect other people and how they affect us as well. Yeah, I think
I love too, Kat, in my community there's often we have like an online community notice board, and often there's people who have something in abundance growing in their garden, whether that's a herb or a vegetable or a fruit. And I think that's a really lovely way to connect with the community, with the seasons, with the earth. Kind of that beautiful sharing creates connections, and not only with the people who you're sharing the produce with, but with the actual produce, and knowing, oh wow, I really didn't know it was blah 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 season, and you know, kind of that sticks in your head, and you share that information.
Yeah, such a simple way to be connected. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, there's so many. I wanted to ask you, Kat, do you find that we've talked about connecting with the seasons of the earth? Do you find that connecting with your own inner seasons, talking, you know, about the menstrual cycle or whatever cycle you're in terms of, throughout our lives, from childhood to menarche to, you know, early adulthood, do you find connecting with those cycles helps you feel more connected to the earth as well?
Good question. I'm not sure if I'd say it helps me connect to the earth, but yeah, I suppose it does, but maybe not on a conscious level. But yeah, like obviously women have got that association with the moon, whether your menstrual cycle follows the moon or not.
Yes.
There's definitely a relationship and an awareness that we are cyclical beings, and it's more kind of like, not evidence to say, but it is more of like we have an embodied experience, don't we, as women, as being cyclical beings, like the seasons, like the moon, you know, like the movement of the planets, I suppose, on that bigger level. So there's definitely that awareness.
I
it's
find
really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I find like speaking to young girls about their cycle and kind of relating our seasons to the seasons of the earth, you know, our autumn, our winter, our spring and our summer.
Yeah.
Can kind of, you know, that a connection comes about that way, knowing that kind of, you know, autumn and winter are preparing to rest and sort of that coming down and the less energy, whereas the spring and summer are, you know, building up with energy and, you know, motivation and being more social, you know, connecting how our bodies move with what they're familiar with. You know, the Earth's seasons can be a really nice way to connect in that way.
Yeah, and I think it just makes sense because you can see it so obviously, and you know, we talk about that a lot in my family as well, and I find it really helpful having that awareness of the menstrual cycle to plan your calendar and to plan your month, knowing that, you know, it will shift and ebb and flow over time because we are not calendars within our bodies.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's definitely helpful to be like, you know what, telling the family, like, this is the week before my period, like, I am not doing this, I am not going out to, I'm not adding extra in this week, like, I'm gonna, as much as I can, push things off or explain, okay, we're going to pull a meal out of the freezer this week because I don't have the capacity to do that at this time of my cycle when I've got lower energy to draw on. And so it can be really helpful, or to even just verbalize, you know what, I actually just need a bit more time by myself this week because, or yes, I can, you know, sometimes I'll make plans if someone wants to do something. Yeah, I'm in the up part of my cycle with more expansive energy. Yep, I'll squeeze that in. Whereas it can really help you to make decisions that honor you more sustainably.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, honoring all of those cycles, you know, the cycles within ourselves, the cycles within the earth, add that really beautiful layer to our self-care.
Oh yeah, absolutely, because it has such a big impact. You know, like we've spoken, like we're so interconnected with everything. We respond to things, and to think that we don't need to change our self-care with the seasons or with us, you know, the seasons of the year or the seasons of our menstrual cycle. I think that can lead to a lot of the symptoms that crop up because we're just not in alignment with the ebb and the flow of ourselves.
And I think too, I had this conversation with Twiggy yesterday, when we get into that state where we're really not tuning in or allowing ourselves time for connection, that's when we tend to reach for things like you said, the Withania or the ashwagandha, to give us a bit of a boost. And we kind of use those herbs in a way that can be a little bit enabling, don't we? You know, we kind
definitely.
of, you know, we reach for the Withania to allow us to push on through, when really, if we'd connected and listened and allowed ourselves the space, you know, maybe we use Withania to help us have that clarity and to make the changes, rather than here's something that's going to, you know, enable me to keep going how I was going.
Yeah, definitely. Or just realizing that there might be a time in your life, like maybe you've had a death in the family, or maybe you're moving, or maybe you've got a big project at work. Withania is perfectly indicated to get you through that, but to know that you can't do that as your modus operandi for your whole life. You know, you can't just get through things. You need to honor your body, you know, whilst being fully, you know, I think something we haven't spoken about yet is the privilege that is inherent in all of these options. Like, there are some people who don't have the option to change their schedule or listen to their body. Like, if they're a full-time carer of a family member who has special needs, or if they are a single mom who's working 3 jobs just to make the ends meet because rents are so high, you know, this is where it comes back to that conversation about the systems that we live in that also affect our health and our capacity to make choices. There are some people who maybe have had problems with addiction from, you know, some kind of abuse in their childhood, and that can then affect the decisions they're able to make in response to that. So I think it's always having this view to the privilege that we have in the options and the systems that affect us and make it easier or harder for us to make these decisions.
When I was speaking with Cassie Hauer on my latest chat on the podcast, we spoke about how it's about bringing in the feminine softness to those models. You know, it's often that we're stuck in that, you know, that masculine state of, you were speaking about productivity and having to go, and, you know, not recognizing cycles or the need for space, or, you know, the possibility that, you know, someone needs the capacity to be able to care for themselves, even if they have all of those things on their plate. And that's kind of what is layering over the top, isn't it? That often makes us feel powerless in those decisions.
Yeah, and I think as well, going back to what we said earlier, thinking that we have to do it all alone. Like, we will all have these challenges in our lives, but if we cultivate a community of community care, so not just self-care, but community care, then when we're going through rough patches or we have a bigger demand, we can call on support from others in our community to help us. Because I don't think we are meant to just look after our health alone. We need to be like, oh, well, you actually have these life circumstances which have given you, you're having to outstrip your capacity to work so much to pay your rent, or having to care for that family member who's in hospital. Let's make you some meals to get you through this, or let's help you find a house that doesn't cost so much, or we share house, or like we can solve problems together that will have tangible benefits for our health when we work together and we cultivate that community care mindset rather than always thinking we have to do it ourselves. And I think that's a really important, it opens up the options and the strategies we have available to us.
Absolutely. And it's kind of, it allows people who are in states that you just spoke of to feel held and lighter and freer, rather than bogged down and thinking there's no way out of this. This is my life. I'll never be able to do anything beyond this. I am at capacity and I have no space for anything else. Yeah. Yep. And how to, and again, picking up themes that we've spoken about, like I do think we need to have a cultural mindset where we make space for that. If all of us run our lives at 100% capacity all the time, then when the inevitable, crap hits the fan, which we know is going to happen, we don't have space, we don't have capacity, we don't have energy reserves to deal with that. And then we don't have energy reserves to help others deal with that either. So it's like, how do we pace our lifestyles enough to have that in reserve so that we can help each other and ourselves and I guess have that expectation of mutual support, mutual relationships that, I'd love to explore with you, Kat, as a little kind of nice way to sort of end this conversation, about, leaving our listeners with some practical, suggestions about how we go about cultivating community.
Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah. I'm not sure. I think it is partially, firstly it starts in your own heart of being, it's almost like you have to adopt the identity of someone who is willing to be part of a community. You need to look for ways to bring in support and care and kindness into your relationships. I've got a friend who says that we were part of a community and they were all sick, and so I just bought her a meal years ago, while we were just in the early phases of friendship, and she remembers that and I don't really, but that's because I've just got that mentality of when people are going through things, you'll just show up with a meal and support them. So I do think it's like looking for ways to be supportive, I suppose, and whether that's stopping to say hello to your neighbor, whether that is, like you say, going to the farmers markets to buy seasonal food from people who are growing it to support their livelihood in your community, whether that is, it's almost like we extend our circle of concern to include others as part of our concept of self in a way, so we put out water for the birds, or we pick up that rubbish so it doesn't go into the oceans, or there's a lot of ways. And that then brings it back to the small, tiny things that we do every day. I don't know. Is that helpful? Do you think?
It's beautiful. It does, and that's really lovely advice. I think it's the small things that we do every day that kind of cultivate that culture of reciprocity. Your friend felt your love, and that helped her feel included, and that started to build that web of community.
Yeah, and I think it's when we build that identity within ourselves, we're doing that because that's how we want to show up in the world. We're treating others how we want to be treated, and it's not that I do that so I get that in return, but it's just you just look for ways to be kind because you understand that we have we're interconnected, You know,
Absolutely.
so you look for ways to care for community. You look for ways to care for the earth. You look for ways, again, to care for yourself. Like I think whenever we have this conversation, you need to be aware that it's, I teach this to my kids because I want to teach them to be kind and to be in service to others. But often we have that as a martyr complex, or like that good girl, that people pleasing. And so I always teach them it's like a seesaw, you know, like you need to care for others, but you need to care for yourself as well.
Yes.
And sometimes you'll make decisions where you put others first, and sometimes you need to say, no, I know you have a need right now, but I need to take care of myself because this is where I'm at. And so again, going back to that, being in touch with yourself and knowing that you ebb and flow, and being able to make decisions that honor where you're at in that moment. And that it's dynamic. There's not like a rule where I will always do this. It's kind of like I will always be kind within my capacity. And sometimes I need to support my capacity first. And to realize that, you know, it's coming back to that dynamic dance, isn't it?
Absolutely. I love that, Kat. I think that's a really big part of ensuring that this mindset is sustainable. You know, if you're not recognizing that it's too much for you to give right now, you need to give to yourself, then that kind of breeds resentment. It's not sustainable. It's not, you know, it's not creating true connections in the community. It's not coming from a place of true giving, is it?
Yeah.
I love that beautiful practical advice around starting to create those beautiful webs. You know, we spoke about the farmers market, you know, caring for friends and family, even simply, you know, offering what you have in abundance to your community. All of those things are lovely ways of, you know, starting to build that web. What about some practical tools for, you know, starting to cultivate that connection with the earth, so that you do then have that flow-on want to care and take bigger action?
Well, I think finding ways to see the interconnections between you and the earth, you know, whether that's reading science or whether that's reading poetry. There's so many ways that we use language to describe the world and the interconnections, you know, like we spoke about argon at the start and how the elements connect us all, whether we think of ourselves as stardust, whether we you know, think we all come from the same creator, like whatever it is that makes sense to us in our lives. I think it's finding resources that help us to see our interconnections with all of life around us. And, you know, as the more you study nature, the more you see that, like that classic the branches of a tree look like the lungs. And so, or you know, when you look from above and you see the estuaries and the rivers of the water, and it looks like the veins. You know, there's so many, you know, from a herbal medicine point of view, that doctrine of signatures that shows that we and the earth are we're one. And I think it's finding, you know, I think that sometimes this can become a should as well. Like, I think it's finding ways to enjoy it, you know, like people be like, go out and connect with nature. But, you know, I always find it funny because everyone's like, go out and do all this earthing. And I'm like, have you been to my place? There are midges, there are mozzies, there's like really sharp rocks. Like, earthing is not always comfortable. You know, like, so you got to always come back to the practicality of your personality and your place where you live. Like, what do you enjoy? Do you enjoy swimming in the wild rivers? Do you enjoy dancing on the grass? Do you enjoy feeling the winter sun warming you? Like, how can you bring joy and pleasure into that? Because we're going to inherently do more of what we feel good doing. And so as many ways as we can turn to nature as possible, whether we love birds and we want to become total nerdy bird watchers, or whether it's knowing everything about, you know what I mean? Like, you get the point, but I think that's a big part of being sustainable.
I love you bringing in that concept of pleasure and joy, because, you know, we're not going to keep going with something if it feels like a chore. You know, it's not at all motivating to feel like someone's told me to do this and I must do it every day. You know, there's not going to be that open-hearted connection. if we're coming from that space. And I also want to take you back to that comment that you made about how we're so quick to say, oh, that one drink or that one cigarette or that one toxin exposure is going to make such a big difference to our health. But we're so quick to, not recognize how beautiful those singular moments of connection with nature are, and how deeply impactful they can be. Like you said, that beautiful, joyful, pleasurable swim in a cold water pool, or simply collecting a bunch of flowers and having it sitting on your windowsill and enjoying that, noticing that color or smell every time you walk past. That those small tiny moments of connection cumulatively can have such a wide range of benefits and ripples out into your wider community.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We've had a really wide-ranging chat, Kat. Was there anything else that you wanted to delve into or to talk or touch on before we wind things up?
Oh, I'd love to keep having the conversation. Like, if anyone's listening, just reach out and have the chat with Jess or with me. I'd love to, because I think, especially when we talk about broadening this concept of self-care and about connecting to nature and taking action in the small things, and how do we take action in these bigger systems as well. We've got the concepts, but then it's the practical reality of how do we actually make this, how do we do this in our own lives, and how do we do this together with our communities? And I think that's where there's the really interesting, fascinating conversations to explore together. And I think, we've said a lot, we'll only find solutions by talking together as a community about it. And that's why I'm so excited to be able to talk to you about this on the Elder Tree podcast and, have this conversation with our broader community, because I think it's important to start expanding self-care and expanding our understanding of how we build health and the actions we do in daily life to build health, and know that we need to care for ourselves and care for our community and care for Earth, because they are good things to care about by themselves. The Earth has value by itself without us, but we are part of that reciprocal relationship of being stewards and in relationship with the earth. And so we have that role in caring for it as it cares for us, as we use herbs and we get all those kind of mental health benefits and physical benefits from being outside. The sun freely gives her life-sustaining energy to us every single day and doesn't go, okay, what are you going to do for me? But part of us being grateful and reverent and recognizing that benefit is going, okay, well, how can I care for you? How can I share care for the world?
Yes.
So it is developing that deep understanding of our interconnectedness. But how do we do that? It's the conversations to have as a community, and I'm really excited to have these conversations and want to explore that more. So
yes, absolutely. Let's continue the conversation. So if there's something in this conversation that has sparked an interest in you, make sure you reach out to Kat or I, and we can continue the conversation. Before we go, Kat, I know that you have a new offering on the horizon. Do you want to speak a little bit about that before we go?
Oh yeah, I'm super excited. So I'm putting together a herbal tea making course at the moment. So I love teaching people to use herbs in daily life more confidently. And so in the spring, I'm going to launch this new herbal tea mini course. But what I'm really excited about is I'm not going to just give recipes and teach have people learn recipes, but actually teach them the fundamentals of formulation and being able to make their own tea. So it's here's how you actually come up with your own teas every day, and here's why you choose the herbs, and here's how to change them by adding different herbs, and how that subtly changes the herbs, and how to really intuitively blend your own teas at home, and kind of working from a core group of herbs, so that one, you've actually got the herbs on hand and you don't need to spend hundreds of dollars on a huge apothecary. But two, you just learn how multi-purpose many of the herbs are. Herbs aren't like drugs. They don't just do one thing in the body, but they have so many gifts to us, and we can work with them in so many ways and expand our understanding of them. So we can work with Tulsi for immunity, we can work with Tulsi for nervous system, we can work with Tulsi for the digestive system, we can work with it for sinuses, and it's like an anti-catarrh. There's so many ways we can work with Tulsi, and there's heaps of others as well, like focus, calm, so many ways. But so rather than thinking of Tulsi as I've got this recipe for a nervous system, for a calm a calm tea and like I just put Tulsi in that box. It's like, no, let's go back to the herb and let's learn how to formulate with it to bring out its different qualities. So I'm really, really excited about that.
I love herbal tea as a beautiful way to introduce people to using herbs every day.
Yeah.
So
do I. And it's good because you get the ritual of using tea, like you get the you get to be in charge of it because you can hand blend your own herbal teas at home every day. Yes. And to be honest, it's affordable and it's accessible and it's quick. Like you don't need fancy equipment. You don't need to wait months for something to steep. It's like you wake up in the morning, you go, I want a tea. All right, I'm going to have a tea. And it's ready for you to drink, like, 15 minutes later.
They're hugely effective. People often think about a herbal tea as just something yummy to drink, but they're actually really medicinal. And, we spoke about connecting with the herbs. When you're making a herbal tea, you're using all your senses. You're looking at the herb. Is the colour vibrant? You're smelling the herb. What kind of smell? You're tasting the herb. It's such a beautiful way to connect in a really accessible way.
Yeah. So I'm really, really excited about that because it is. And the course will cover all that. Like, what's the difference between a beverage cup of tea and a medicinal cup of tea? How do you make it therapeutic? How long do you steep it for? How much herb do you use? Like, there's so many questions that people have around tea making. Yes. And it's really helping them feel that they're not, again, just having to rote learn what someone else has said, but teaching them true understanding so they know what they're doing, how to make the choices, how those choices, like what those choices will mean. And then how to substitute if they don't herbs and how to be really empowered in that process. So.
And then they have at their fingertips all of these beautiful tools for addressing different things that pop up in health. I'm excited for you, Kat. That sounds like a beautiful offering.
Thanks, Jess. It's exciting. I've been drinking a lot of herbal tea.
Perfect time of year for it.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on today again. It's been really wonderful to broaden our understanding and to really delve in much deeper to the concept of self-care. So thank you.
Thanks, Jess. It's been a pleasure. You're wonderful to talk to and share these conversations with. So I'm sure you're enriching everyone's lives by getting to share so many insights from different people and bring your own take to it. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Kat. I'm so glad you tuned into this episode of Self-Care with Herbs, a segment of the Elder Tree podcast. The Elder Tree is a non-profit dedicated to putting the medicine in the hands of the people through grassroots herbal education and earth skills, weaving a strong community of herbalists, healers and plant folk in Australia. If you'd like to dive a little deeper, you can head over to our Patreon, the Elder Tree Trove, to access special content from our podcast guests. I hope you found something in this episode that has inspired you to begin to lean into those plant allies and to experience your practice of self-care blossoming and blooming. I look forward to sharing more ways you can weave plant medicine into your days next month.